Previously on Coffee with Kenobi.
Star Wars card and dice game. You essentially have these cards and a set of dice that go with them, and you pick 2 or 3 characters, and you essentially battle them out between your opponent. And sometimes they're very thematic, like you can have Kylo Ren and Captain Phasma on a team battling Rey and Finn, or they can be kind of odd, like now one of the reigning decks out there is a Thrawn Unkar pairing, which is totally non-canonical, but super fun. And
it's like peanut butter and a pickle sandwich, though.
Right.
This is Vanessa Marshall, Harrison Dula from Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Hello and welcome to show number 88 of Coffee with Kenobi, your spoiler-free place for Star Wars discussion, analysis, and rhetoric. I'm your host, Dan Z, enjoying a robust cup of coffee in my Star Wars Galactic Nights mug, excited to discuss and analyze Star Wars with each of you. I want to thank you all for joining me today for coffee and Star Wars conversation. Whether this is your first time listening or you are a longtime CWK family member, please know that you are appreciated and are a valuable member of the Star Wars community. We hope to make you think about Star Wars in a whole new way and maybe laugh a little bit in the process. On today's show, we discuss the new poster for Season 4 of Rebels. I'll talk with our co-hosts about how they consume Star Wars. We will bring you the latest news. And in the coffee chat, we discuss one of my favorites, Qui-Gon Jinn, and his philosophy on the Force and the Jedi Order. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite coffee mug, and let's have some coffee with Kenobi.
And now, let's see what's brewing in the Star Wars universe this week.
Something big is coming from Coffee with Kenobi in the very near future. It's something I've been working on for a very long time with help of the co-creator of Coffee with Kenobi, Mr. Corey Clubb. And it is something we will be showing more and more about, especially on our Coffee with Kenobi Instagram and on Insta Story. So be sure to check that out. In fact, that is where we're going to reveal the official logo of a future project for Coffee with Kenobi that will allow you to experience our show in a whole new way, something I'm really excited about. So be sure to check out our Instagram for more information. And if that isn't enough of a teaser for you, I'm tremendously excited for my capstone presentation this Friday, September 29th at Illinois State University at the T21 conference, which is going to be a conference for future teachers and current teachers and people who like to use technology in their classroom. I will be on from 3 o'clock to 3:50 p.m. Central Time, and I'm going to be discussing how I incorporate Star Wars in the classroom. The whole topic for my talk is find your voice in the classroom and how to show your students that being yourself is something that you should embrace, and hopefully it will inspire students to do the same in their daily lives, in their walk. Something that I think we can never emphasize too much. And now it's time for the very first Coffee with Kenobi book study. As I mentioned on our last show, there's so much Star Wars to consume, which we're going to talk about later with Jeff and Garr. And I wanted to find a way to read Leia and Phasma in a way that was at a good, comfortable pace. So I started thinking about it, of course, the way I do in my classroom and how I divide up chapters. So this is a bit more of a lengthy read than some of the things we read in class, depending on the age level and sort of the time of year and things of that nature. But for today, for this show, we're doing Chapter 1 of Leia, Princess of Alderaan, and the full schedule is on the Coffee with Kenobi website, as well as in our show notes. This book, I can already tell, is going to be tremendous, and it's Claudia Gray through and through. She knows the voice of Leia. She just encapsulates her spirit so well. And I just want to read the very first paragraph to all of you. And this kind of typifies Leia right here. The day of demand had been announced months before. Guests had already arrived from worlds across the galaxy, and delicious aromas from the banquet being prepared wafted through the palace halls. The weather had failed to cooperate with the celebration plans. Low, dark clouds hung heavily over the city of Alderaan, threatening a downpour, but even the impending storm felt dramatic and grand in a way. That last sentence, to me, the end of it especially, but even the impending storm felt dramatic and grand in a way. To me, that is a perfect metaphor for Leia, Princess of Alderaan. This is who she is. This is who we know her to be, and where she ends up in The Force Awakens. She's got that spirit, that passion, and there's sometimes, I don't know that there's necessarily joy, but there's definitely a spirit there that embraces life. It's interesting that this is her day of demand. This is the ceremony that they have to indicate that Leia will soon be the queen of Alderaan. And for whatever reason, I never really put that together. I mean, of course, I knew that a princess becomes the queen, but I never thought about the fact that Leia would have been the queen of Alderaan if not for what happened with the Death Star. Interesting. So they have a gathering of food, and as literature students know, food and gatherings of that nature around food mean something important, something special, something close and ceremonial. That's why you go on a date for the first time typically and go get dinner, because you're showing community. Breaking bread together is important. This is important to the people of Alderaan. And we see this as Leia is walking the ceremony. She's talking to guards, and she knows the details of their lives. And one of the guards recently had a child. And just the fact that she is able to talk with everyone in the palace, it seems, and she knows about them personally. I know that obviously means a lot to people. It shows you what kind of person Leia is. She's not stuck up in any way. She doesn't take her position in Alderaan for granted. She cares about people, and that's why they love her. So Mon Mothma was in attendance. There's a few other people of note, but Mon Mothma is interesting. We know that there's quite a history there with those two. And she's 16 years old, and I think it's interesting in this part because she doesn't actually know when her actual birthday is, and she doesn't much care. She knows she's adopted, and she knows it's around the time, but that's okay with her because she's so at peace with where she is. Now, this ceremony is interesting. She takes out this sword that she's to hold aloft, and there's a little back and forth that her and her mother and father say, Bail and Brea Organa. I think that's how you pronounce it, Brea. And it's just fun kind of seeing the excitement and the pride that they both have for her. So she has to do 3 challenges: a challenge of the body, a challenge of the mind, and a challenge of the heart. For a challenge of the body, she's going to climb a Penza Peak and reach its summit. For the challenge of the mind, she will no longer merely assist her father in the Imperial Senate, but will also represent the world of Alderaan in the apprentice legislature. And for the challenge of the heart, she will undertake missions of charity and mercy to planets in need, paying all costs from her share of the royal purse. Through these challenges, Leia says, I will prove my right to the crown. And it seems that the next few chapters of the book are going to show those challenges. And it's Leia, so probably trouble is going to find her, and it won't be something that she won't be able to handle. And I like that there's a balance there of mind, body, and heart, because she is a full, well-rounded person. And it looks like this is going to put that out really well. But the interesting conflict that we see right away, the internal conflict, is she wants to be noticed by her parents, but as soon as the ceremony is over, they talk to the guests and seem to basically ignore her. At least that's how Leia takes it. And she says this has been going on for 6 months, and that's interesting. So the rest of the chapter 1 kind of goes back and forth with that. There is a quote that says, Leia discovered early on she liked a good fight, and this was in regard to politics. It shows that feisty nature where she's not afraid to speak her mind and point out injustices and fight for what she believes to be right. The very last sentence, Leia says, I'll do something too great for them to ignore, referring to her parents. So we've got this young, ambitious 16-year-old who's very precocious and very capable, and she's trying to prove something to her parents. It'll be interesting to see as this story develops why there is this kind of a separation, because it seems to be, as we mentioned before, within the last 6 months. So for the next show, we will be reading chapters 2 to 8 of Leia, Princess of Alderaan, and I look forward to your feedback and your thoughts. We've already got some feedback for chapter 1, and this is from Stephen from Roku Depot, which I really appreciate so much. And Stephen writes, first off, I like how the book is zeroing in on Alderaan, Brea, Bail, and how the whole royalty and power thing works for the planet. So much of this information has been left untouched that it's really interesting to finally see someone explore it. We're getting glimpses of what Leia's childhood has been like, as well as some big reveals on her knowing that she's an adopted child, and this being public knowledge. It's a good start for the book. Stephen, I agree. Thank you again for sending that in. Stephen has set the ball rolling for us, and I encourage each of you to send in your thoughts as we go along with these books. So again, chapters 2 to 8 for show number 89.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first?
Joining us today for a cup of coffee is the Comics with Kenobi co-host, and of course he's a CWK blogger and longtime friend, Jeff McGee.
And you forgot Marvin Dog Media.
Oh, I didn't forget. That's coming up later.
Taylor and Jeff. Okay.
I know how much you like to say
Dan.
Marvin Dog Media, though, too.
This is true. I love saying Marvin Dog Media. So, hey, Dan, how's it going?
It's going well. Always awesome to chat with you. We chat pretty much every day via text, but it's always nice to be on a show together.
Agreed.
Also joining us, a returning guest, is our Star Wars superfan and an all-around great guy, Garr Van Orden. Welcome, Garr.
Thank you. And you forgot nothing. I am not a professional like you guys, but I'm so happy to be here again and happy to be speaking with Jeff again.
Oh yeah, and I think this was a request. I can't remember who it was, but they said, hey, we got to get on Jeff and Garr on together. So,
yeah, that was me. That was me requesting it. Yeah.
There you go. Things happen on Coffee with Kenobi. You never know who you'll get paired up with.
Exactly.
And we got, it was in passing, it was real brief because there was so much busy going on at Celebration Orlando, but I did get to meet Garr and shake your hand, so that was cool.
Yeah, that was lovely.
How did you like Celebration, by the way?
Oh, it was great. I mean, a friend of mine that we grew up together in Illinois, and we went to college together in Utah. We met up together, and we haven't seen each other in person in a long time. And we went to a ton of different panels and got autographs and all kinds of things. And I mean, I can't complain at all, except for the lines. That was, one thing that was like, man, staying, in line for so long for some of these things was a little bit crazy, but it was wonderful.
Yeah, it was fun. I don't know when they're going to announce when the next one is, but I'm guessing it'll probably be after The Last Jedi kind of fades into DVD and Blu-ray, and then we have the Han Solo film.
Yeah, if that ever gets a title.
Exactly.
I'm telling you guys, it's just going to be called Untitled Han Solo Film. They're punking us all.
That's what Steele said when you guys were on. So let's shift gears and jump into the opening. The new poster for Season 4 of Star Wars Rebels came out, and you've both had a chance to look at it. What are your overall impressions?
I love it. I mean, it's not the most amazing, surprising poster, but it looks good.
Yeah, I like it. I like the composition of it. It's there's not a lot of action going on when it other than the heated space battle going on in the background
and the explosions and the lightsaber
and the explosions and everything. But it's not in the forefront. But it's you and I have different library experiences clearly.
Well, Tom's a librarian, so there you go.
There you go. But I do like that we get a portrait of basically the family, the Ghost family, with Chopper right there in the middle. And I love in the background we have the wolf in the center, then we have Thrawn on one side, and what is the Arinda Price?
Yes,
that's her name, right? Yeah, really like that we've got both of those guys in the, or all three of the characters really in the poster, and it just again just looks like we're in for more of the same, which is always welcome because I really love what they've done with Rebels.
It's a wonderful show. Yeah, it's a wonderful show. Go ahead, Garr. What were you going to say?
Sorry, I just wish it wasn't the last season and it wasn't a half season. The first season was a half season, and this one is as well. So that means it's like a total of 3 seasons. And Clone Wars was 5.5 seasons, and they were planning 8 seasons, and I would have liked that. And certainly, you want to go with quality over, quantity, but if you can have both, even better, And so it's a bit sad to see it wrap up, and it'll be interesting to see what they do next.
I'm pretty encouraged because I know these are going to have a lot of weight. There's going to be a lot of cost here because we don't know truly what happens with these characters. I mean, we presume that's Chopper in Rogue One. I'm 99.999% sure that it is. And of course, we hear General Syndulla mentioned. But when you look at this poster, it's of all of the posters for the upcoming seasons. I mean, I don't know how your favorite one couldn't be Vader and Ahsoka dueling. I mean, that's pretty much impossible
right.
at the top. And then you've got
iconic.
Maul from last year. And then this one doesn't really have a main villain. But if you notice, of course, the wolf is centered, which is, of course, a Filoni signature. And then looking at the faces of our crew here, I feel like the one who's the most at peace. I think there are two that are really at peace, and it looks like it's Kanan and Sabine. And I feel like we've seen a lot of their arc. Did either of you get to see the first episode of season 4 at Celebration?
I did not.
And you did?
Yes, I did see it. Did you see it, Dan?
I did. And this, we know Sabine is in for some incredible emotional baggage and major conflict she's going to have to face. The very first episode is powerful. I won't spoil it here, even though I'm sure people could go anywhere and read synopses about it. But it's heavy, and I don't know. Like you said, there's the explosion in the background. They're still together. And it's just the fact that Price and Thrawn are on equal ground, equal billing, that really was, they were both pretty much co-main characters in the Thrawn novel. So I wonder if she's really going to be a featured villain in this, or just maybe to make the poster look cool.
Maybe both. I assume, it's nice to balance. Yeah, symmetry. It's nice to balance the poster. Garr knows this from the theater. You don't ever want it to be symmetrical, but you want it to be balanced when you're doing any kind of design. And I think it balances it out nicely. But, my hope is that it's going to be kind of a continuation of sort of their story. And we're going to maybe see them working either in tandem or in parallel.
Oh, I think so. She's someone who goes through the ranks with patience and persistence. And the closer she gets to where she wants to go, the more dangerous she becomes. And Thrawn he's Thrawn, right? I think whatever's going to happen with him may be as interesting as almost anything. Before we wrap this part up, which character of the characters on this poster are you two most interested in seeing the resolution of their arc? Or maybe it won't be the resolution of their arc, but just kind of seeing where we find them at the last episode of season 4. And Garr, why don't we start with you?
Thanks. Yeah, I'll just jump and say that Kanan is, he's always been the most interesting character to me. And his fate, I'll say it, is the most, I guess I don't know where it's going to go. And so I'm most interested in where it could go and in relation to the other characters.
Jeff?
Chopper.
Really?
No, I'm kidding. I am a little concerned because, droids are built to last. So I assume he's going to, I'm not going to speculate, but no, like Garr, I'm most interested to see what's going to happen with Kanan and Ezra, because, we don't hear about them later on. We don't hear about any Jedi. And so, who knows what's going to happen. I'm a little concerned that we might see something happen that is pretty final for one of them, but again, who knows? Again, I don't want to speculate, but those are the two characters that their arcs I feel like are the ones that we've been the most focused on for the entire series, and I think they're the ones that are going to give us the most interesting payoff.
I definitely have a fondness for all of them, and some more than others, but that's natural. But for me, I don't think it's a surprise. It's Kanan. How could it not be Kanan? I love this character. Like you said, Garr, to me, he's the most interesting of all them, and that's not to take away from the rest of them. I find something in Kanan that I love, and of course, Freddie's a big part of that. But I've just always liked his look. I like how far he's come from A New Dawn, the John Jackson Miller book, and just seeing this image here, he looks so at peace. And the first episode of season 4 is so spectacular. What he does with his lightsaber. He's one to watch, as they say. So we will go ahead and take our first break. And up next, we're going to take our first break. And up next, I'll check in with Jeff and Garr about how they consume their Star Wars. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Coffee with Kenobi.
Coffee with Kenobi is sponsored by the Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps. If you love Star Wars and love the excitement of chasing your favorite Star Wars collectibles, the Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps is for you. Download the free app from iTunes or Google Play and collect your favorite images from the classic 1977 Star Wars cards to the Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, The Force Awakens, Rogue One, and now The Last Jedi. Collect and trade with friends new and old through the Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps. These are the cards you're looking for. Huge thanks to our amazing Coffee with Kenobi Patreon contributors, including Ben Elkington, Jason Hall, Dennis Keithley, Angela Souse, Aaron Harris, Brian McKinney, Mediocre Jedi, Connie Shee, Terry Lee, BJ Smith, Nick Deco, Adam Leonard, Jim Capron, Mark Suter, Mike Audette, Eric Struthers, Jared Cantor, Swartasala, and Christo Hayting. Our Patreon page is a way for you to help us out with our show expenses, including the RSS feed, which is how we distribute our show to so many podcast channels and formats. Helps us host our webpage and upkeep and travel for the show. There's a lot that goes into making a weekly Star Wars podcast, and we couldn't do it without your help. Donate anywhere from $1 all the way up to wherever you feel the Force is calling you. And the incentives are really awesome as we go along. $5, you get recognition at the start of each show, a follow on Twitter. And then from that point on, we have a new feature called the Discord app. It's a way to chat with us on Coffee with Kenobi and with your fellow Patreon contributors. Last time when we talked about this, for $35 or more, you were able to start your own Discord channel chat. But we have changed that. Now, if you donate $10 or more, you are a part of the Discord feature. And it's really, really exciting. A lot of people are getting a part of that. We are posting our Force Friday Gets, talking about the Star Wars Rebels Season 4 trailer and much more. There are a lot of wonderful things. In addition to that, you can get a CWK coffee mug, a T-shirt, or get a chance to host the show with me for 1, 2, or 4 times in 1 month. So be sure to check out the CWK Patreon page for more information and details. We are back, and for our interview portion of the program today, I wanted to check in with both of you and kind of weigh in on how you guys consume your Star Wars. And we've talked about this sporadically throughout the history of Coffee with Kenobi, and it kind of came up for me because we're doing this new CWK book study, and I was thinking about how much we have going on in our lives and how wonderful Star Wars is as an escape. But we definitely have to pick and choose how we consume and what we ingest. And obviously we like all of it, or we wouldn't be on a podcast talking about it. I think that's probably fair to assume. But you have to prioritize, right? So one of the reasons I started the CWK book study is I wanted it to, quote, force me to make sure I took time each day to read a little bit, because that's important to me. I think there's a lot that happens in the mythology of Star Wars through the novels, and that's one thing that I've always valued about this franchise. What about you guys?
It feels like I take mine intravenously, but no. As a co-host of Comics with Kenobi, I am required to read all of the comics that come down the pike. And I'm glad for that, because that's the only way kind of like you, that's the only way I would actually keep up with all of them.
Right.
And I really get a lot out of it. I enjoy, there's several titles we talked about on the show, that there were several titles that had come out that I wouldn't have read otherwise if I hadn't been reviewing them, and ended up really liking them. The Darth Maul miniseries that just finished is a prime example. So as a result of that, that doesn't leave me a lot of time to read anything else, any of the non-picture books, as we call them on the show. And I when I do consume one of those books, it's usually through an Audible audiobook. That's how I got through Thrawn and really enjoyed the audio version of that. And that's really, apart from the films and the TV shows, comics and audiobooks is how I get most of it. And I don't do a lot of reading online because I'm trying to stay as spoiler free as I can. So the majority of mine is through my eyes and ears, which I guess is to be expected.
And I just basically do audiobooks. I mean, I'll listen to any audiobook, but if there's no audiobook version of it, I won't. I usually don't get time to read it, and I wish I was up on all the comic books so I knew what Jeff was talking about. Well,
if you listen to Comics with Kenobi, you'll know it all.
Well, yeah,
and it'll only take you 3 hours to listen to.
And it is like easier to listen to that than to pay for all the comic books and read them. I've never been good at I don't. It sounds weird to not be good at reading picture books, but but I've never been. but as good at reading those for some reason and staying up on top of those. But I subscribe to everything like on Facebook, like all the different Star Wars pages, and just try to read up on all the articles, and just try to be as current as possible. Mostly as a distraction to the rest of life, but yeah.
The comics thing, the comics are hard to keep up with, I think, because, well, I don't read them digitally. I like to go to the store and get them. And they seem to pile up. And when I get them, I love them. Some more than others. The Mace series really hasn't done too much for me so far. But everything with Darth Vader in the main title is so good. Do you ever find, guys, when you're reading the novels or the books, do you ever find yourself kind of fact-checking and thinking, I'm not sure if the character would act like this?
All the time. That's one of the things that Matt and I are pretty vigilant about in the comics is this true to the character, and does this sound like something the character would say? And by and large, the authors do a really good job. But every once in a while, there's, in fact, on the upcoming episode that will be out next week, we have a couple of moments where the dialogue doesn't sound like something these characters would say, and it doesn't happen that often. But I do find myself all the time wondering, is this really in keeping with the character that we know and love?
I think I do that much. I'm more like, oh, this is what they would say, really? But and then sometimes I just don't like the book because I'm more like, that was boring. Not much happened in it. But most of the time I like them.
Or you get the other problem too, where there's too much going on. There's too much interaction between characters, because I feel like the interaction between Han and Leia should be. I mean, obviously they are around each other a lot, but I feel like that's got to be tricky to write without, making The Empire Strikes Back lessened, which obviously you don't want to do. So that's always whenever I see those two together, especially when they're alone, I kind of cringe a little bit.
That's something that has been interesting for me, because the majority of the books that we've gotten take place either between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back, or right before The Force Awakens. The Poe Dameron comic, for instance, takes place in the lead up to what happened, the events of The Force Awakens. And it's getting interesting, especially in the Star Wars, the main title, because it's taking place most of the time between Star Wars and Empire. I'm afraid they're going to run into the same problem we had with what we now know as the Legends line. The Legends canon, whatever you want to call it, is that they're going to run out of space.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. They're going to run out of days between.
Yeah, when they first announced the canon switch, I immediately was like, really? Everything is canon now? Like, eventually things are going to conflict, or, like, for example, I was just reading the Tarkin book, and in it doesn't mention Krennic at all. And, of course, if you read it right away, you wouldn't think that. But now, having the hindsight and all, it's like, wouldn't Krennic be at least mentioned somewhere in there? And, I wonder, I would like them to just release, like, maybe special editions of books.
Huh.
Yeah. Nice.
I love that. And I sort of like that Krennic isn't mentioned, and I think you could rationalize that because they definitely knew about Krennic when they were doing Tarkin, at least the story group did. Thank goodness, by the way, that we have a story group, so you can at least feel like people who love Star Wars, with incredible passion and get paid to love Star Wars, which is pretty wild. They're going to make sure that it stays true to the mythology. But we're still going to be gatekeepers and purists because we love Star Wars so much. The thing with the Tarkin novel and not having Krennic, the reason I like that is because I feel like he would be so dismissive of Krennic anyway, as he is in Rogue One, so that kind of makes sense.
That's exactly what I was thinking. With Tarkin in particular, it makes sense because he was trying to keep Krennic down, so he's not going to give him any kind of attention at all. But I do see what you're saying, Garr. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because it would be fun to see them. Those two interacting is powerful stuff. I guess I didn't really include action figures or collectibles in this because I feel like that's a different kind of consumption of Star Wars. It's still obviously huge in our lives, but I was mostly thinking more of the literature. What about video games? Video games are something that I like and appreciate much more so when I was younger. And now, I mean, I'm excited for Battlefront 2. I almost feel like a very, very slight amount of pressure, and pressure may not even be the right word. I almost feel like I have to buy this or they're going to take away my podcasting license or something.
Well, I hope that's not the case because I will not be purchasing it. I'm not much of a gamer. I like a lot of old school retro games. That's mostly what I play. And if you've ever played like Super Star Wars, Super Empire Strikes Back, and Super Return of the Jedi from the Super Nintendo system, they're some of the hardest games you're ever going to come across. They're like Ghost and Goblins hard. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough. I played the Battlefront from the last version of it. Really enjoyed it. Didn't play it much because I just don't game a whole lot. But the Lego Star Wars games are the only ones that I've played pretty extensively in the last 10 years.
Those are good.
But I love them.
Well, they're really accessible, and my family can jump on with those. Yeah, I don't want to buy a new system to get this new game that I'm going to play occasionally and then forget to play it. And, it looks fantastic. The trailer I watched looks incredible, but I'll play it with my brother who's going to get it. But I can't justify buying all that.
Well, like Amy said on show 87, it's these are the kind of things that are fun just to watch people play as well, because especially if they're good at it, they move the story along and pretty cool. I mean, it's crazy to me that years ago I was so good and adept at video games, and now I'll spend an hour and a half trying to figure out how to walk in a circle without actually being circular.
No, you're right. And, I never played The Force Unleashed, either one of those games, but I have been known to go on YouTube and watch videos of people playing it because I do like the story. I think the story is so interesting. Mm-hmm. And so if we get some of those, that's the only time I would be tempted to invest some time in it. But again, you do have people who post to YouTube so you can go watch the story. And I think it's phenomenal that the writing has gotten so good on those games that they can stand up to the literature from the saga as well.
Right. It'd be interesting to know which is the most challenging to kind of keep track of if you're in the story group, because I mean they all have the same characters, but they all sort of have a different rhythm to them. I mean, there's different pacing. Comics, you don't get really as much exposition because they're shorter, and you got to keep things moving because it's such a visual medium. And then novels can have much more of a slow burn too.
Right. Exactly.
So interesting. So let us know how you consume your Star Wars and sort of how you prioritize and where you kind of make things fit into your Star Wars experience. We will take a break and come back with news. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
The Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app features incredible images from many aspects of the saga, including the original trilogy, the prequels, the Clone Wars, Rebels, The Force Awakens, and Rogue One. It's the quality you have come to expect from Topps. It's also easy to get into and really fun, too. Your favorite Star Wars characters, scenes, and moments are in every pack. To get started, download the app for free from iTunes or Google Play, and then be sure to open the app each day for free credits to spend on card packs from the Cantina. Plus, if you can't get what you're looking for, there's a place to trade with your friends as you complete your Star Wars collection. And if you're an experienced collector, there are exclusive cards, special inserts, and autograph opportunities for you to enjoy. Don't worry about missing the cards and sets you want either, as you can sign up for notifications right on the app. The Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps can be downloaded for free from iTunes or Google Play. Be sure to download the app and start your collection today. The Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps is available now. And remember, these are the cards you're looking for.
We're back, and as I mentioned at the top of the show, Tom is not able to join us this evening, so I am taking the news desk over for this show, and we're going to start with Ryan Johnson on Instagram and Twitter, post-production on Star Wars The Last Jedi has officially wrapped. So it's getting real, guys. It's getting real.
I'm just excited that the guy who started the movie is the same guy who ended the movie. Things have been going lately.
Yeah.
Doesn't it seem so early?
Early? I was wondering that too. I feel like The Force Awakens maybe they didn't wrap this soon, but this is pure random guessing on my part. I guess what's nice is they can score it. I mean, this doesn't mean it's the score has been inserted into the film, right?
Oh no, post-production. That's the score is part of that. Yeah.
Post-production is wrapped. It's done. It's ready to go. Yeah.
The effects.
You're right. The Force Awakens was right up until the 11th hour.
That's what I thought.
They did some extensive reshoots on it. This tip, what's interesting is we've heard all of the stories coming out of the Han Solo movie, and now with JJ replacing this. We've heard nothing from the set of The Last Jedi other than J.J. Abrams saying after he read the script he wished that he had signed on to direct it, which to me is a great vote of confidence in the film. So my guess is that this has just gone as it was supposed to. It's gone as expected. Mm-hmm. It ran like the well-oiled machine that it should be, and he's done with everything a couple of months earlier than you ordinarily might be. So this gives him time to really look at it, and it also gives him time that if somebody watches it and they say, oh, you know what, we really need to go back and work on this, they have time to. But to me, it just says they got in there, they did their job, and we're going to have a really, really strong entry in the saga.
Yeah, it's gone so well that people were wanting Rian Johnson to come back, even though they haven't seen this movie. And I can't say I wouldn't mind that, but I mean, I want to maybe see the movie first, but I mean, I'm happy JJ's back, but I'd be even happier if Gareth Edwards were back, because I loved Rogue One so much.
No, for sure. It's cool. I was so taken with Rian Johnson at Celebration. I didn't get to meet him, but whenever you'd see him talk and the way he was on the Last Jedi panel, he really and actually talking to Leland Shea about it too. They love him. He's so great to work with, so passionate. But I feel like he keeps a nice, loose atmosphere, but he still manages to keep the intensity where it needs to be for the second film in a series. So this is cool. I mean, I hope it doesn't mean that this is the last we've seen of Rian Johnson, besides the promotionals that they'll do as the film is about to be released, because I feel like he's one that we're going to hold with some high regard when we look back at Star Wars directors.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, and he makes good movies apart from Star Wars. Looper is a phenomenal film.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. And his episodes of Breaking Bad are some of the best as well. I've not seen The Brothers Bloom, but I've heard nothing but good things about it, so I need to check it out.
That's great.
Well, there's your homework for next week.
All right.
So moving on, we have something that's a bit different in scope, but still pretty cool, and I think you'll appreciate this, Jeff. Star Wars color-changing spoons in General Mills cereal. Have you seen this?
I have not.
Oh, well,
tell me more.
Oh, I will. Well, General Mills, of course, says famous for their Cheerios. Boy, Tom, we need you back, buddy. Let's listen to the news. But they've got 6 different spoons. This reminds me when Revenge of the Sith came out. They had the lightsaber spoons. In fact, I found them a couple weeks ago, and they still worked, which is cool. These, you put them in the milk, and they change color, and it looks like you've got BB-8, and you've got Kylo, and Phasma, and Rey, and pretty slick, and they have a little code on the back of all the different boxes. Pretty fun. Is this something that... Were you a spoon guy? Spoon man?
Well, I'm a cereal fan, so anything that helps me eat cereal, I'm a fan of. And I actually have one of the lightsaber spoons. My friend Gary sent me one a couple of years ago in the mail. I didn't even know that they were ever a thing when Revenge of the Sith came out. So this is something that I might actually decide that I need to try to track down a set of. So yeah, I'm totally into this. This looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I might have to check this out. When you said this, that's the first thing I thought of was those lightsaber spoons. And I remember trying to get different colors, but all I could get was a red one. And I bought all this cereal that I didn't necessarily like, just to get these lightsabers. I couldn't get some other ones, but I haven't been eating cereal lately. I'm cutting out the carbs. So, but I'll have to get it anyways and just make my kids eat it, I guess. That's
what a good dad does. Attaboy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's BB-8, Phasma, Chewbacca, and R2D2. The one I left those two, and then Kylo and Rey. Like I said, yeah. These are some of the things I love most about Star Wars. I mentioned this on our Force Friday 2 show, but the consumables are just fun. Because they're not expensive and they're still fun to chase down and they're a bit easier to find. And then you have to, of course, which spoon did I get? So you have to buy a lot of cereal. But considering the fact that I live with 3 children, we always have cereal on hand. And this is just another great excuse to go ahead and get some.
I live alone, and at any given time, I have between 3 and 7 boxes of cereal in my apartment. So, yeah, this is not going to be a problem for me at all.
The Star Wars cereal, though, like the actual Star Wars cereal that's like unique with the marshmallows and all, like kind of tastes terrible, don't you think?
I haven't ever tried it, actually.
And finally, Ron Howard, of course, his Twitter account, I have no idea how much it's expanded since he took over as directing the Han Solo film, but he's clearly having a lot of fun and he's making marketing a lot easier. But he's done some really cool tweets lately that he's revealed a lot of stuff, including perhaps the spice mines of Kessel, and then this really great image where he asked someone to translate for him, and he put a hashtag McCoy.
Yeah, I missed that. But if it's anything McCoy related, I'm definitely going to have to go check it out. In fact, I'm going to go right now.
You should. Well, basically, it's nothing that gives much away other than the fact that Ron Howard is clearly steeped in his Star Wars lore. And whether he knew what the translation was or not, Paul Bateman, of course, who worked with Ralph McQuarrie and such a great Star Wars fan, a great guy, he showed a painting of McQuarrie, and this is something that the font that appeared on Yavin.
Oh yeah, it might be.
So of course, no idea if that means it was necessarily this scene is on Yavin or whatever, but it's just the fact that again, there's so much connectivity. Is always great. That's one of the things I love so much about Star Wars and which makes the mythology so fascinating.
Yeah, and I love everything that he's been tweeting out sort of to try to keep everybody interested. I feel like he's doing exactly what he needs to do to sort of reassure everybody that the movie's in good hands and that they're working toward a finished product.
Yeah, it's certainly better than, just hearing drama and nothing. It's so weird that he is able to keep it on track and keep this May date, but they're okay with JJ pushing back episode 9. But, whatever. This will be great.
All right. Well, very good. That was our news segment. Tom, please come back soon so that I don't butcher the news anymore.
Dan, you handled that just fine. You handled that with a plum and a peach.
Thank you, sir. Your check is in the mail, as Jeff McGee might say. So we will take our next break, and when we come back, we will look at a topic that Garr introduced, Qui-Gon Jinn and his mantra versus the Jedi. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Coffee with Kenobi.
Coffee with Kenobi was sponsored by the Star Wars digital card trader collecting app from Topps. If you love Star Wars and love the excitement of chasing your favorite Star Wars collectibles, the Star Wars digital card trader collecting app from Topps is for you. Download the free app from iTunes or Google Play. From the classic 1977 Star Wars cards to the Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, The Force Awakens, Rogue One, and much more. Collect and trade with friends new and old through the Star Wars digital card trader collecting app from Topps. These are the cards you're looking for. It's coffee chat time, and one of my favorite things about this show, besides being able to converse about Star Wars with these amazing people, is the behind-the-scenes stuff. And when Garr and I were emailing earlier this week, he said that he had a topic that he had as a suggestion, and it's great. We haven't talked a lot about Qui-Gon Jinn. He's definitely one of my top 5 favorite characters in all of Star Wars. And Garr, go ahead and introduce the topic for me.
Yeah, well, I just was thinking about this recently, and I posted it on Facebook, and I knew you liked Qui-Gon Jinn, and I knew that Jeff needed to appreciate the prequels more, and so I just figured it'd be a good one. I think when we all went into Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, we all thought that the Jedi were perfect. I mean, I think I did.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We assumed.
And then to see them flawed, it was almost like, are we saying this right? And then when the trilogy was over, or at least by then, I realized that the prequels are such a great tragedy. Like unto, I just watched a version of Othello the other day, and I was like, this is just like, Revenge of the Sith and all that. And it's a so the prequels are a tragedy on three fronts that people forget. Everyone knows about the tragic story of Anakin falling to the dark side. But of course, next one that most people know about is the tragedy of the Republic falling and turning into an empire. But the one that everyone forgets about, I think, is the Jedi. And the Jedi are not perfect. And like any great tragedy, you don't want the character or an organization to be so bad that it's, okay, may as well fall. You also don't want them to be so perfect that it's just so surprising that it falls. You want them to be flawed, right? And so they're good. The Jedi are good and they're great, but they have flaws, just like Anakin has flaws, and just like the corruption in the Republic. And so I think Qui-Gon is there to represent sort of the ideal Jedi. Just like there are some ideal senators, but most many of them are corrupt. But Qui-Gon is there to be, if he had been the good Jedi, he would have left the Jedi, like unto Ahsoka did, because the Jedi weren't doing the right thing. And when Obi-Wan says to Qui-Gon, you be on the council, why are you defying them again? I had originally thought that he's kind of a rebellious Jedi, but actually he's doing the right thing by not doing, following all the dogma of the Jedi. And he's when Count Dooku said that he wouldn't have gone along with the Jedi, he was telling the truth. From it's kind of, it's propaganda. He's telling he's telling a kind of
point of view.
yeah. Well, from a certain point of view, he's got a bit of truth in there, in that he wouldn't have gone along with the Republic and the Jedi, but he wouldn't have gone along with the Sith. He would have gone his own way, the right way, and that's what's so fascinating. The biggest flaw that the Jedi did was join the Clone Wars. The Jedi used their power only for knowledge and defense, or should, but they weren't. They were using it for attack. They were using it to fight a war. They never should have joined. And Qui-Gon, at least by then, would have left and trained the Chosen One by himself, and trained him up right, instead of, the Chosen One is caught up in this war, and the Jedi are caught up in this war, and they're distracted, and they're not thinking about what's most important, like we can in life. We can be caught up in stress and, in work and things, and not remember what's most important in life, and, snap and not love our family, and, things like that. But Qui-Gon is the pure one, and the Jedi, Mace Windu even said something like I think it is time we inform the Senate that our ability to use the Force has diminished. Because they've gone down this dark path, they, their Force powers weren't even as good as they used to be. And I think, if you watch the Clone Wars, there's so much, more added to this, where Yoda realizes that they're going down this dark path, and there's not much they can do at this point. Kind of like, Darth Vader later, feels like he's got no choice, but he eventually does make the right choice and is redeemed. And the Jedi at this moment, they're too prideful. They're turn around, admit they were wrong, leave the Clone Wars, leave the Republic, even if they have to do the right thing.
I think that's I like your perspective, and you made me think about something that it's sort of always been in the back of my brain, but now you've helped me to sort of flesh it out. So thank you for that. And it's this: the Jedi come under attack quite often when we look back at the prequels, as far as how they handled things and the fact that they turn against their Jedi dogma, as Palpatine says, and they were part of the Clone Wars. But what about this, gents? What if everything happened the way that it happened, and instead of being generals, the Jedi just said, no, we're peacekeepers, we really can't get too involved with this, and they became Switzerland? What would have happened then? What would people think of the Jedi then?
Oh, they were in a no-win situation here, because if they had done that, the Republic would have fallen probably even quicker.
I think
although,
I disagree, though.
Oh, good. This is what I like. Good.
So
you're right to disagree.
No, I like
you're right to be wrong.
Honest discussion between open-minded people, and this is why I love having you guys on.
Yeah.
Well, it's impossible to know for real. I mean, I can't know for sure, but
it's not impossible. I used to bullseye Wildcats in my T16 back home.
But I mean, my point is, I think that's exactly how the Jedi felt. I think they felt like they were between rock and a hard place. They didn't know what to do, and they felt like this is the lesser of two evils. They had to do this. However, if they had done the harder right, the more correct but harder choice of not following the Republic and not joining the war, I think they would have been more of a clear mind and conscious, and they would have been more connected to the Force, and they would have been able to meditate and work together and see the truth and find out where the Sith Lord actually was, instead of being distracted by everything and caught up in the war and the hate and everything.
Well, that also brings to mind, though, the fact that this was all orchestrated by Palpatine.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one clouding the Force, was clouding their vision, clouding everything. So,
which is why the Force
does it even matter? Yeah,
to me,
right. Exactly. So, I mean, does it even matter? But, Garr, one thing you said, I love what you had to say about Qui-Gon, and I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, totally.
And the thing that's always stuck with me is that, you said if the Jedi had followed his lead, that's what they end up doing. The teachings that Yoda gives to Luke in The Empire Strikes Back are many of the very things that we heard Qui-Gon say to Obi-Wan in The Phantom Menace. And I don't know, I assume you guys have been reading every word of my blogs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course.
So I've been I've been doing a film by film discussion of the saga and what keeps bringing me back to each one. And the next one up is going to be The Phantom Menace. And here's a preview of it. Qui-Gon is the main reason I keep coming back to that film. He is the character. He grounds the entire film. Liam Neeson's performance is just phenomenal, as you would expect from Liam Neeson. Just the gravitas that he has, and he's just this calm center to it. And that's the thing that has always drawn me to Qui-Gon, and I think that's the thing that the Jedi needed the most. So I wonder if, had he lived, if he would have been able to make more of a difference. But again, we'll never.
Well, that's something that Garr said. That you talked about it, if he survived to let the Jedi Order. It'd be interesting. It's hard to imagine him staying away from the Clone Wars for long had he survived his duel with Darth Maul. But I'm reminded of the recent last few issues of Darth Vader, and I can't think of the name of the Jedi that he takes the lightsaber from, but he kind of took the Qui-Gon path that Gar's talking about, didn't he?
Yes, he did. I forgot his name because the character annoyed me.
Really?
You know what? The one who took the Barrage vow, right?
That's right. Listen to Jeff and Matt talk about that in Comics with Kenobi. By the way, it's awesome.
Yeah. We were both fairly annoyed by the character, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I think, but I think he was he fell prey to the arrogance of the Jedi, and that's one thing.
Oh yeah,
Qui-Gon had an arrogance about him But it was more with Qui-Gon. It came to me. It felt less like arrogance and more like just a confidence in the Force, rather than a confidence in himself.
Interesting.
He was he's sort of the hippie of the Jedi.
But
which is not a bad thing.
Jedi should be hippies, though, right?
Exactly,
I mean, they're all about nonviolence. At least that's what they preach, or should be preaching. And like you say, they are doing it in Empire Strikes Back, but it's at that point it's late for the whole Jedi. The whole Jedi Council and the whole system should have been nonviolent and not about the Clone Wars. But they went down the dark path, and it dominated their destiny. Right?
I think it could even be argued too that Yoda and Obi-Wan, even as an enlightened Force ghost, they still don't quite get it. And it isn't until Luke throws his lightsaber away in the Emperor's throne room, Return of the Jedi, that the balance comes back. I think
you're absolutely right. And yeah, somebody made a good point once. I don't remember what it was, but with very few exceptions, I think Palpatine a couple of times is less than truthful with Anakin. But through the first two films, the Sith never lie. Dooku never lied to Obi-Wan.
They tell they're dishonest.
Challenging statement, which I really, really like, because it makes you think.
I would argue that they are dishonest by telling the truth, and like I say, it's propaganda. They're telling a nugget of truth, but it's just for their own, agenda. So it's not like the whole truth. But yeah, it is interesting.
It's like a lie. There's lies of omission and of commission, and yeah, they frame it and manipulate the truth to cause great harm and destruction. So what do you think the outcome of the Clone Wars would have been had Qui-Gon survived? Do you think we still would have had Anakin's fall? I feel like we still would have, because Palpatine is the X Factor, not Obi-Wan. Because you could almost say, well, if Qui-Gon is the X Factor, then maybe it's Obi-Wan's fault that Anakin turned. And I don't think there's any guilt that should be placed on Obi-Wan. And I'm not just saying that because of the name of the podcast either. I think Anakin is a grown-up, for lack of a better word, and he made his choice, and it was obviously terrible, and he made it right eventually. Which that's a whole topic for another show, of course, the redemption factor. But I think he made it right.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. It's totally Anakin's choice. No one to blame but him. And Obi-Wan is one of the better Jedi, and so is Yoda. But I mean, both of them were part of that Jedi system, and they didn't quite get it until it was too late. And well, can I say this? I'm sick of people saying that Anakin fulfilled the chosen one prophecy by helping to kill all the Jedi and making it balanced, 2 Jedi and 2 Sith. That's totally not it. That's not what George Lucas thinks at all. He's said many quotes before. He did fulfill the prophecy by destroying the Emperor and saving his son in the galaxy at the end of Return of the Jedi. It's in the documentary that he made, that's on the DVD of Revenge of the Sith, and there's more information in Rebels and everything. It's just so obvious that yes, Anakin is totally the chosen one, and he did it at the end of. He brought balance at the end of Return of the Jedi, just to be perfectly clear. And so the question is, I mean, to me, could he have brought it sooner? I mean, could he have brought it, in Revenge of the Sith, and then have the galaxy not turn into an empire? I mean, you can't know for sure, but I think he could have brought balance earlier. He did bring balance eventually. He eventually turned around, but I think he could have if he was raised by Qui-Gon. If Qui-Gon had brought him and his apprentice away from the Jedi when they were going down the Stark path, and he had brought him up correctly, and then they had found the truth through the Force that Sidious was the true Dark Lord, and they were able to do the right thing. It's hard to know for sure, but I think it's possible. Yeah.
a lot of good food for thought. So let us know what you think about the role of Qui-Gon in the Clone Wars and what may have happened had he been around, and whether his philosophy was something that should have permeated a little more readily with the Jedi. We'll go ahead and take our last break. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are the podcast you're looking for. This is...
Before we get to email, I want to thank our CWK sponsors, the Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps. Please support them the way they support our podcast, and remember to listen to new and archived shows of Coffee with Kenobi wherever you listen to podcasts, including iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Player FM, our Coffee with Kenobi website, www.coffeewithkenobi.com, or wherever you enjoy listening to your favorite shows. And if you listen to the show through iTunes, please leave us a review. We are also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and Tumblr, and we'd love for you to check us out there. Be sure to listen to our CWK family of shows too, including Legends Library, Rebels Reactions, Comics with Kenobi, and Lattes with Leia. A huge thank you to Jeff McGee and Garr Van Orden for joining us today. Where can listeners get in touch with the both of you if they want to ask either of you a question or just say hello?
Well, I'm glad you asked. You can find me on Twitter at the Jeff McGee, that's the THE, or at Marvin Dog Media, not or, and Marvin Dog Media. If you haven't followed either one, follow both. You can also hear me weekly on Talking Toys with Taylor and Jeff from Marvin Dog Media, where my buddy Taylor and I, surprisingly enough, talk about toys. And we have another show coming up in a couple of months featuring Mr. Dan's there as well, where we discuss the Wave 4 of the G.I. Joe line. You can also hear me each week on the Geek Supreme, which is the new iteration of the Geek Directive on the Assembly of Geeks podcast. It is Around the Horn meets Wait, Don't Tell Me meets Whose Line Is It Anyway? The show that's up right now features a great debate between myself and Regina Davis about the new Star Trek series, in as much as you can call a debate when it ends with someone saying, "Bite me, Jeff." So that was a lot of fun.
Well, that sounds fantastic.
And then you can also hear me on Comics with Kenobi the first week of each month, which we have a new one coming out next week, as well as my monthly blog, The Caffeinated Collector, on coffeewithkenobi.com. And I think that's all.
And compared to Jeff, you can find me nowhere. My goodness. I'm not a professional like these guys. I'm just super happy to be here. And I have, you can follow me on Twitter at Garwars, GARRWARS. And I'm much more active on Facebook. So just let me know you're a Star Wars fan. That's why you're following me. And I do talk a lot about Star Wars on there. And my name is Garr Van Orden, GARRR, space VAN, space ORDEN. And so you can find me on Facebook there.
Greatest name ever, by the way. Should be a Jedi. That should be a Jedi name.
Oh, absolutely. That's true. That's very true. Well, I will definitely have links to all of this in the show notes, as well as where they can find both of you. So thank you to each and every one of you for listening to and supporting Coffee with Kenobi, and for contributing to Star Wars Conversation. We will be back next week with 2 new co-hosts and more Star Wars talk. And be sure to stay tuned to our Instagram and Insta story for something new and exciting coming very soon from Coffee with Kenobi. This is a podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here.